let's talk a little bit about criticism. I have a bunch of thoughts that are sort of kicking around for me because the past few weeks I've been sort of passively hanging around in songwriter forums, just kind of listening to things that people post to you know to enjoy throughout the day. And part of what happens in songwriter forums is that there's a distinct cadre of people who view it as their mission to offer critique of anything that they listen to. Um, and while I respect where they're coming from, I gently disagree with some of that, in particular when it comes to unsolicited criticism for novices. Um, so I want to talk about my philosophy about unsolicited criticism for novices. Then I want to go a step further and talk about how to process criticism in general. Because whether you asked for feedback or didn't ask for feedback and just received it, and whether you intend to truly analyze that feedback and do something with it, or whether you simply need to restore your faith in yourself and your own vision and check the validity of something that has potentially shaken your confidence. Being able to separate fact from fiction, separate truth from ego, separate the wheat from the chaff, and get to the heart of the matter is a difficult endeavor. And then related to that, I want to talk just a little bit about how to process criticism from someone whose bona fides you don't necessarily, someone whose bona fides you question, someone who you question whether they really have the credentials for what they're saying to be, if their expertise is valid, if they really know something you don't, or if they just have an opinion, and how to take their message and test it against your own relative subjective plane of operations. Okay, so that's a lot. It's probably going to be a long one. So here we go. Okay, first off, unsolicited criticism. So if you post stuff, you open yourself up to unsolicited criticism. And again, it's I totally understand when people say, here's something I'm working on, what do you think? They're inviting critique, and if you have it in you, you should go ahead and give them some. Keep it courteous, keep it kind, keep it on point. Try to back up your opinions with some, cite your sources a little bit, but nonetheless, go for it, no problem. Where I gently disagree with people who offer a lot of critique is when it comes to novices in particular. In my opinion, it sort of goes without saying that novice songwriters, or novices in any creative endeavor or otherwise, novices have, by definition, a long way to go, a lot to learn. And simply listing that or pointing that fact out over and over is kind of disheartening noise. Yeah, I get it. Now, if they're a strong-willed person who's confident that, I got a long way to go, but nothing will discourage me, that's a rare individual. But if all they're going to hear is negative, it just becomes noise. What is far more useful, in my opinion, is that when you recognize you're listening to a novice, like someone who's maybe not as experienced as you by a far cry, try instead to find what's working. And if you feel like, for the sake of honesty, you have to say, yeah, you got some stuff to work on, but I'd really like the melody you've chosen in the verse. I wouldn't say that first part even. I think it goes without saying, like I said. I would simply say, I really like that turn of phrase. This caught my ear. And just let them know, hey, that worked for me. that's a data point. Because at that stage of the game, you really need to try to like anchor yourself to your strengths to build that foundation of who you are. And then later is when you start to trim out or improve upon things that you're a little weaker on. You got to build your strengths to start with. You can't just start by addressing weaknesses, because everything's kind of weak, even your strengths, when you're at that stage. Okay, so that's that part. Now, you've received some unsolicited criticism or solicited criticism, and how do you process it? I did another video called Lowe's Law of Criticism, and I'll link to it up here or whatever, where I kind of, along the way in my day job, I came upon a really I think a really great philosophy of how to process criticism from someone in the academic world that I worked with. And so I've appropriated it and I've named it in his honor. I'm not going to rehash that here, but I will make reference to it in a little bit. So let's talk about like, what are you really trying to do when you process criticism, whether you like this person's bona fides or not? You are really trying to determine the alignment between their point of view and your point of view and goals. So it's kind of consider the source. The first thing to do actually is consider the message. Like, okay, what are they saying? Consider the message. Consider the source. Consider your biases or your point of view. Consider your goals. So what you're trying to accomplish is as close to an objective beacon. You're trying to move towards this. This is what you have in mind. You're moving towards that. They may say, here's where you are, and they may give you criticism that would move you over here. Which is not to say that that must be wrong, that might be something to consider. Maybe you should make it a country song, even though that wasn't your goal. I don't know. But you need to recognize that would represent a real redirection. That's a big change, for instance. So by consider the source, or by consider the message, that's where you're really going to apply the Lowe's Law of Criticism. That's where you're going to really look at, okay, they're saying something. There may be, if people are talking about, if enough people are giving you this message, there might be something there. And I know, so I wasn't going to rehash it, but I'll rehash it just a tiny bit. So Lowe's Law of Criticism, in short, is when people give criticism, they're pretty good at identifying that there is something amiss. They are a little less good, but still pretty good about knowing where it is. They're less accurate about knowing what it is. And they are the least accurate about knowing how to fix it. And we tend to deliver criticism in the opposite order. We tend to say, I would do this about this thing that I feel is funny here and makes me feel like the song has this kind of overall issue. The opposite is probably, descending accuracy. Anyway, you can, for a little bit more detail, you can visit I already linked to it. You can find it. Okay, so that in a nutshell is how, when you're taking in this message, even if you have questions about the person's bona fides. And so let me give you an example of what that means. Like, I might get a criticism from somebody, and then I might kind of remember that I've listened to something of theirs and that I feel like they're on a level, like they're on a level that's less polished than me, or that they're not as capable as I am. They, perhaps they're a novice telling me that, X, Y, and Z. Now, does that mean the novice is wrong? No. But it does mean that I want to place their remarks in context that I want to take their message and test that, but I really want to be careful about going too far, or also I want to be careful about letting this bruise my ego. And we all can be kind of disheartened, discouraged if people, especially if criticism is awfully blunt, as it often is. Anyway, I have an actual example, and I'm gonna run through this. And so I'm not going to name this person because this is an example of criticism I received, unsolicited criticism I received on something that I posted that I'm not really looking for help with, that I feel is, it is what it is. It's, in my view of the world, it's finished product. And I do kind of have questions about this person's bona fides. Like, in listening to their material from before, feel that they have some real glaring issues with some of the choices they make and the things that they let stand, that tell me that they don't necessarily, they've got some bad judgment, in my opinion, about what they let pass to production quality. And so that gives me pause taking advice from them about how to, how they think I should have done things differently. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean that there's not something that I can gather from this. But that's where it is. So just in case, I've shot a couple versions of it and I can't remember, but if you don't know my bona fides, I'll just cut this out if I'm repeating myself. But if you don't know my bona fides, here it is in a nutshell. I have some things that I stand on, and I have other things that I lack. So I've been a songwriter for more than 35 years. I have more than 500 songs that I've written. I went to music school, and I have a degree in music composition, albeit from when I was a much younger, college-age person. Here are some things I do not have. I do not have a commercial success or placement. So I don't have a song that, I haven't sold a song to anybody. I don't have a hit. Like, I can say, this reached number 45 on the Billboard Top 100. I don't have anything like that. I don't have a placement in movies or TV. Like, I don't have any licensing songs. Any songs licensed. So those are things I don't have. And then there's some other things I do have. I'm very confident that, hey, I know how to write a song. And I feel like, hey, it stands on its own merits. But there are, if I'm giving you advice about how to be more commercial or achieve commercial success, there's an appropriate grain of salt to be applied to anything that I have to say about that, even though I might be right. But it may be a little bit more secondhand. Anyway, let's launch into this. So, there are two critiques by the same person on two separate songs. I think I'm going to cover both of them real quick as best I can. Okay. The first song is, and I'll link to it, is a live, spontaneous version of my song Sleep. So Sleep is a song I wrote decades ago when I was in high school. We have it in our book because it's a nice piano song that I can play when the occasion arises that there's a piano at the venue or we're putting together a piano set. It's something we don't do very often. I almost never bother to pack up my keyboard and take it with me because we have a book with more than 150 songs, the cream of the crop, 150 songs, most of which are guitar songs. I'm not going to carry extra gear just to the piano. It's a sort of a novelty we do every now and then. That said, I was like flipping the page. This one came up and I thought, we got the full band here. Let's go for it. So in this particular song, I look at it as this is sort of a new exploration of a song that I have a lot of faith in, just in general as a song, but one that I don't play very often. And so this is a breath of fresh air. There are some things that are going on here that you know I'm completely comfortable with. This is a sparse arrangement. It's a slow ballad kind of song, and I don't need a whole lot going on. We all locked in with each other and we all sort of took our role. So there's bass, there's cajon, there's me playing sort of rhythm guitar, and then there's Gene playing lead guitar. As is often the case, I really want to give Gene some space to operate. Anyway, I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's listen to the criticism and let's try to align it to. So my goal with this song is to give a fresh spark, a fresh take on an old favorite. And I'm not looking to rewrite the song at all. This is a fresh arrangement of an old standard of mine. That's how best to think of it. Okay, so the criticism is, like this, I would like to hear some colorful chord extensions in this. Has a lot of feel, too many holes, but really good to pull that off. Okay, so this is delivered kind of as a club sandwich. Sort of good, bad, good, bad, good. Well, not bad, but positive work. So I liked this. And then I'd like to hear some colorful chord extensions in this. It has a lot of feel. Too many holes, but really good to pull that off. And I respect that, that's a school of thought, the sort of sandwich style of, put the bad news between two pieces of good news is a common technique that, lots of people advocate using. It's a common piece of advice. So let's focus on just the bad news. Okay, I'd like to hear some colorful chord extensions. So what I want to do here is consider the message. So what does that mean? They're suggesting a solution, but let's, again, using Lowe's law, let's try to focus a little bit narrower on like more so what is an issue and where, or that is there an issue and where might it be? So what strikes me out of this is that they're commenting on the sparseness of the arrangement. And although that's intentional, I know that there's a component where, because the original song's in E flat and this was a spontaneous performance, and because I have the dual role of laying down the chords, the multiple role of laying down the chords, the feel, and delivering the vocal, that I definitely wound it up and let it go as soon as I knew that Sean, playing bass, and Gene, playing a very accomplished jazz guitarist, had sort of found stuff to do. I lay back. Maybe I did that a little bit much, and maybe if this was something I was trying to really put out there, like if I wanted to put this on an album, I would have to consider whether or not I want to overdub my guitar and add in a little more body. So I was only using, for the most part, fifth chords, whereas the original piano chords are typical of my voicings, more dense, more colorful. So even though I don't necessarily think of this, I'm not sure I'm going to do anything about it. And the bottom line for me is I listen to the thing and it works. I think it's lovely. I think that Gene and Sean carry it. They carry me. And then the vocal has a lot of space to operate. And I think that, I'm very happy with my vocal performance here and the general vibe. I think this worked. I would listen to this. If I put it on an album, I'd be fine with it. But I also think, yeah, it's true. I played a very simple part on guitar. So they've identified that, and for them, they're saying, maybe you could have done more. And point taken, I could have done more. In a perfect world, if I did this again, maybe I should be a little more prepared with a guitar arrangement, for instance. So that's how I would process that. Like, my goal here is simply to have a breath of fresh air. I did that. I'm happy with it. This critique, how can I place it? It's sort of, I'm going to acknowledge that there's a little something there. I'm not going to give it a ton of importance because I think the bottom line is I'm happy with what I have. So too many holes, I'm not really sure what that means, but I kind of feel like it reiterates, or it orbits the same issue that I just addressed. So I'm gonna say that I've pretty much absorbed what they have to say on this one. So moving on to the next one. I also posted one of my favorite recently written songs, You Know Me. This is one that I really have come to love, and it gets, I can feel sort of playing this frequently. This often gets an audience response. Like, this is one that definitely draws people into me as a performer, and I think has proven itself in live situations to be accessible, a gateway to liking who I am. I get a lot of comments about it. I'm not saying that it's a super duper hit, or what do I know? But I can read the tea leaves, and this is a good one that's working well. So this is the original. Like, the first time we performed this was the one that we put forth, which is for the Tiny Desk contest from a couple years back. So I'm very happy with this, but you do need to know it's a Tiny Desk entry, which means that there's some stipulations. It needs to be a single continuous performance with no overdubs, no stopping and starting, no additional instruments off screen. Like, everything has to be represented. Sort of a, whatever was the dog me, dog, doesn't matter. So there's a constraint. It's part of this, which is it's got to be a live in studio performance in front of a desk. You can get creative, but it's got to be one continuous performance. Anyway, super mellow tune, turn it up, nice feel, like when the guitar comes in. Need a better production here, an overhead mic to catch the performance. Good job. So again, we've got like a sandwich, right? We got a handful of nice things, and then need a better production here, an overhead mic to catch the performance. So again, it's very tempting to like to zoom in on the overhead mic and say, well, you're wrong. We had not one but two. But I'm going to back up. So I think that there's a choice I make a lot over and over. Just a philosophy I have that I currently record by, which is I am much more interested in indicative, sort of approaching live recording. Most of our songs, the songs that go on our albums start as a live recording. We record every gig, and then if we really knock it out of the park on something, if something magical happens by our own estimation, then I'll go back in the studio and I'll add what's missing. I'll add some harmony vocals and drums. That's typically what gets added. This one, in fact, has another version that we haven't yet released that has harmony vocals and drums added. But this is the original. What you see is what you get. That said, like, one of my absolute favorite albums right now is Live at 55 Bar, which is Yannick Quizdala. I hope I'm not slaughtering how his name is actually pronounced, but tremendous jazz bassist. Look him up. And play, sort of crosses lines, sort of new jazz and old jazz. But this is like, it's a live album recorded in a venue, and it's tremendous performances, and the recording is clean. It's not like super noisy or full of background, but it also it isn't like hyper polished, hyper produced in studio sound. There's a rawness to it, but I think that the performances are so amazing that you don't care. And I think about like Beatles albums where the equipment they were using at the time, they're some of the greatest albums ever made, but they have nothing in terms of like the recording techniques that followed, and the recording equipment that followed. They were doing an amazing job with what they had, but it does have kind of a quality to it that is, by today's standards, kind of lo-fi. So my goal is to be very happy with the performance and to feel like the recording is clear enough. In terms of, if I were to evaluate the song, I'm about to release this as a single. Should I halt because he feels like we need a better production? So my goal is a clear enough recording of a really good performance I'm happy with, and I have that, and I'm not looking to change that. My bias or my point of view is that this is the kind, I embrace a lo-fi style, a slightly lo-fi style, and that what comes with that is that he may notice this could be less lo-fi. So there's validity, but I'm going to sort of appropriately, I feel, file it as not one that's going to alter my course. It's something I already know about myself. And so accordingly, I'm going to respect their point of view, respect his point of view, but also respectfully kind of dismiss this as not something that I need to worry about at night. It doesn't need to keep me up at night, and I don't need to think, should I re-record this song? No, the song sounds great. I'm sure I already linked to it in the thing. Okay, anyway, I know this got a little bit long, but hopefully it's kind of a 3 for the price of 1. And hopefully this was useful to walk through this process. And hopefully it can kind of arm you with an approach for how to make useful sense of the things that people offer you as their own perspective on your work. To not shake the tree too much, but also to let some truth bleed through. Okay. In any event, till next time.